Hello. Hi everyone. We are welcome to the channel. Today we are talking about Grimdark. What is it and why do we like it? We as in most of the fantasy readers, not us specifically. So I have three wonderful booktubers who read more than me, especially Grimdark, who are more articulative and who has similar taste with me. So I let them introduce themselves to you. Alan?
I mean, I'm Alan. I'm not
Are
sure
you though? You look like a shadow of Alan.
I'm not certain I knew what this was about. Like I'm reading the heading now. Why do we like Grimdark? I don't. And morally gray characters? I mean, kind of. I'm here because Klaus is here. Like,
Thanks, Alan.
I'm here to talk to Klaus, y'all. I haven't talked to Klaus like live in a long time. So I'm here to talk to Klaus and I guess talk about Grimdark.
It's okay, Alan. Sarah?
Can I top that? I don't think so. I don't have anything to say that's better than that. I'm happy to be here. I did know what the topic was about. I also am happy to talk to Klaus, and I hope that Alan makes it through the live stream. I think YouTube frowns if you actually, end someone's life during a grim dark discussion.
No, that was Grimdark. Oh, he's
So
dead from a cold.
that'd be grim dark if Joe Abercrombie wrote it, and then he laughed and died of a cold during the live stream.
Klaus?
Yeah, apparently I am the aforementioned Klaus, and I used to have a booktube channel, and I am right now asking myself if I've read any Grimdark except from Abercrombie and Martin, but I'm just here to talk to people, so yay.
It's okay. We all can learn from each other. Okay, so until like 2 years back, I used to think Grimdark means violence, gratuitous violence. I read Company by KJ Parker, I think early 2022, exactly 2 years back. Then Zara said it was Grimdark. That's when started me thinking, and I got to know more about it. I mean, I got to know that it's more about bleak setting, world building elements, and these morally gray characters. Basically, I decided it's the books that make me miserable. So, what is Grimdark for you? Yes, Alan, go ahead.
Well, Grimdark, according to the OED, is a genre of fiction, especially fantasy fiction, characterized by disturbing, violent, or bleak subject matter and a dystopian setting. So this says and a dystopian setting, which I don't actually agree with. So suck it, OED. Um, but that is it. So I think the bleak part is right. I don't think it has to have gratuitous violence. Like a
Yes,
lot of
Joe, we
people
will
think,
cover that.
yeah, a lot of people think Grimdark is like, oh, well, and everyone like got sexually assaulted at the same time. And then, like bits of body parts were flowing around because babies were fed into the wood chipper. And it's just like, okay, what? Like, what? I think it's stupid.
I think that's dark fantasy, so
Is there a difference? So what's the difference?
yeah, definitely. Dark is like I would say like, oh, what's his name? Um Lawrence.
Mark Lawrence.
Mark
Mark
Lawrence.
Lawrence. I think that's darker than, for example, Abercrombie, because you have like really bad protagonists telling the story,
Mm.
and Grimdark usually is more nuanced. I mean, if I have Jamie Lannister, I mean, that's not as bad as being that Prince of Thorns who's just killing people and enjoying it. So,
Ah,
yeah.
okay. Have you read any Grimdark? Alan read Black Company.
I mean, yeah. So I know Black Company is considered that. Um, and Black Company are some amoral or morally gray, I guess, um, characters. Slightly less so. I think slightly less so as the series kind of goes on, because there eventually becomes kind of clear sides. But
And that question is to you. Is there a difference between Grimdark and Edgelord?
yeah, edgelords just shop at Hot Topic. But like Black Company, if Black Company's, and again, I don't like seek out, like if something's called Grimdark, like I'm less likely to want to read it. I'm much more comfortable with having read something and been like, it's kind of bleak. But like you said, I do think The Company is the grim darkest of Parker's books. Though the Engineer trilogy that we just read, that's, I mean, if we're going by that, like that's pretty, like everyone's terrible in that. And but Black Company, it would be the first grimdark books that I read if they considered that, because there is a conflict of, in the mercenary company they're not good people. In fact, they're called the Black Company because the origins are, they were just these horrible men, like 400 years ago when it was formed. And the people there, like even the analysts, Croker, is like, I'm not even going to write about all the terrible stuff that the people in this company do, because what do you want me to do? Tell you that all the people I work with are terrible? Okay, like I don't know what to tell you, but there's a lot of terrible stuff that happens in there. I think it is less explicit than a lot of stuff that people call grimdark, that what Klaus was talking about earlier. So it didn't really bother me. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I don't know what's grimdark, what's not. For me personally, like bleak stuff that has a kind of like negative outlook on humanity is kind of grimdark for me.
Do you consider Engineer trilogy as Grimdark?
I think no, because I don't like that terminology. But most of what Parker writes, I would consider as bleak with a negative outlook on humanity. So I don't know. I'm the wrong person to have been invited to this. I don't know anything.
No,
I will talk.
you-
I have more to say about morally gray characters.
Okay, you're right person for me because I
Sure.
don't. Okay, Sarah, go ahead. Grace, I think it is very grimdark. What I heard, Scott Baker is very grimdark.
I don't know. I think you're the right person, Alan, because I don't think any of us really know what it is. Everybody who gives a definition is a different definition. Like Esme said, she writes for Grimdark magazine, and they don't even know what it is. Also, my children and their friends are all like coming in from sledding, so if you just hear like boots everywhere, that's what's happening upstairs. But yeah, I also don't know, and I think even authors don't always know or feel like they have control over that. So a series that I read last year, I read the duology by Shelley Parker Chan, the He Who Drowned the World and She Who Became the Sun. And a lot of people describe that as grimdark. They're very dark. Like, it's very dark, historical fantasy. There's a lot of terrible stuff that's happening. And the author really pushed back and said, no, I don't think this is grimdark. I'm saying that that's not what I set out to write, and that's not what I think this is. But who gets to say, right? Really, the person who reads it and how they view it through the lens that they have and the way that they see the world, I guess, can help determine that too. But I also have no idea sometimes when I'm reading it. The only way that I classify grimdark is if I'm reading a fantasy book that looks dark. Andrew, my husband, will be like, is that grimdark? That's the only time that I ever thought. Because he also thinks that it's very edgy, and he just thinks that it's hilarious that it's even a designation in fantasy at all. But yeah, I also have no clue. But I think that's what makes it interesting, right? Like, for it to be something that there can be so much contention about.
Yeah,
that's true. Matt, the death of the author is very grimdark.
I read in one of the Reddit threads that someone said that grimdark is a feeling rather than a genre, where it depends a lot of what the reader can take, what kind of violence he can accept, and it depends on their upbringing also. So it varies from reader to reader, I think.
Right. And I don't know if the ending, maybe like so for that duology specifically, I guess some things that some characters are hoping for come through by the end. Like, not everything and not for everyone, and bad things happen to a lot of people, but there is some resolution, and maybe Grimdark is the lack of any sort of hopeful, or I don't know, any sort of ending that you could root for. I don't know. Klaus, what do you think?
Well, for me, Grimdark is people doing bad things, but still being relatable, so you can sort of understand their reasoning and how they end up doing that. And that is where I draw the line to, for example, dark fantasy. So if I read Song of Ice and Fire, there are people who do bad things, and you can still, I mean, they are shitty people, you despise them, but you can understand where they're coming from. And I think that is what makes Grimdark the way it is. And in general, I also think that Grimdark tends to be very character focused, or the books I've read definitely are more character focused than others I've read. So if you have like classical epic fantasy where you have sort of your hero's journey, I think it's more focused on the plot and the world, and Grimdark definitely sticks more with the characters.
Right. So for you, dark fantasy is darker than Grimdark.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, dark fantasy is darker than Grimdark. Interesting.
So the thing that I tend to prefer is, I'm going to highlight something for you, Anita. You mind if I take the controls for a second? Sorry.
No, not at all.
Where is it? So like Mark slowly reads as the Grimdark guy. Like he reads nothing but like dark stuff. And when he was talking about like Grimdark one time on one of his videos, he was talking like different like designations like within like different sub like Grimdark stuff. And the Grimheart one or Grimhope or whatever it is, like that's my favorite one, where it's dark and bleak, but there's hope at the end and the heroes triumph. Like that is like the triumph of the human spirit after being brought completely low. And Sarah, this is Greatcoats. Like this is what we see in all 4 of the Greatcoats books. Now, Klaus, no one needs your opinion on Greatcoats. Everyone knows. So Sarah, that's why I said Sarah and didn't address it to the room. Sarah, this is what Greatcoats does, where it's just like all 4 of the books, everything just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And way more bleak than it should be, considering it's about fencers. And then it, turns around at the end of all 4 of them. So, yeah, that is my thoughts on that particular thing. And I think Parker does that sometimes too. Folding Knife is like that, where it's slightly less bleak at the end. Say company. Klaus has read the first book and didn't like it. I remembered that enough.
Twice.
The first one is
Once
the
in
worst.
German, once in English, and I didn't like it in any language in the world.
You know what, Klaus? That's all right. That's okay. We can like different stuff.
Yeah, same with y'all. I mean, I don't prefer violence, and yes, I like Parker's version of Grimdark. Even that, I struggled a lot to get through Engineering Trilogy. Alan knows I took like 3 weeks to finish each book. Oh my god, it's not exactly Grimdark, maybe, but we'll get to that when we talk about morally grey characters, flawed characters. Following a protagonist who is so morally grey, who is we can't even call him morally grey. He's a villain, in my opinion. So following him along the way, getting into his head was so tough for me. But I don't think only Parker, made me read that book. I don't think I would have continued if it is by another author. So, what other tropes do you want to see? What tropes do you prefer in Grimdark?
I don't know about tropes, but I do like when there's a bit of lightheartedness. Like, I definitely like the Joe Abercrombie style of Grimdark, where you juxtapose the really terrible, violent things with the humor and characters that you can, like Klaus said, really understand and kind of root for, even if they're doing terrible things, because you understand. So I know that's not a trope, but it's a style, I guess, and that's the style of Grimdark that I like.
Okay. Klaus?
What I like is when you have a group of people traveling together, but all of them are narrators, so you get their different viewpoints and see kind of, okay, how they perceive each other and think, okay, that is such a terrible person, and then you have their own view on themselves, and you get sort of where they're coming from, their motivation, and you see that really they try to do their best, but it's still shitty what they do. So it's kind of what you have in the second in Before They Are Hanged, second book in First Law, that does that excellent in my opinion. And also if you take, I don't know if Six of Crows is really grimdark because it's YA, but I think there's a bit of grimdarkness in it because people are edgy. So and there you also have like them traveling together, and you have that effect of they tell their own story and look at these people, and these stories sort of intertwine and you have different perspectives. I think that is the go-to trope for me.
Alan?
What?
What tropes do you like, Alan?
What? I don't like any tropes. I like Here Comes the Cavalry. We know that then. All right, Klaus, I know you. Come back to me. My wife apparently needs something very important. Hold on.
Okay, for me, I think perfect for me is Broken Head trilogy, where I thought actually it was very grimdark. I mean, we see horrible things actually, things worse than death, but then there is also hope. I like that kind of grimdark, like Grimheart, as Johanna was telling. I think that's perfect for me. I need to have that hope because otherwise I feel miserable. I don't feel like continuing when I'm feeling sad all the time. I know grimdark by definition lack of hope. It's hopelessness people say, but I need to feel that hope.
Right. I think the second last comment there where it says, I just need for the author to not seem like they're vicariously enjoying writing the grim stuff. I think that's a line, right? It's a hard line to tread. And so I felt that way. Have you guys read the Red Rising series?
I haven't read.
You haven't, but Klaus, you have. So I felt like that when we flipped over from it's the fourth one, Iron Gold, from Iron Gold to Dark Age. I know that most people really like Dark Age, and I do think that Pierce Brown's writing improves as the series goes on and his plotting, and I think that he improves overall. But I did get the feeling when I was reading Dark Age, which is one of the reasons I didn't like it as much, that things were just happening for shock value. And that's what I don't like, is like, it's how dark can we push this to make people feel queasy or grossed out or upset or like it is dark enough. And dark things happen throughout the whole series. But
Beyond Redemption?
Yeah.
Like, have you read that?
I haven't, but I do know like about it.
I had to stop it at 100 pages because I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's dark and like gritty and edgy, and then there's like, what are you doing? Like, what a cool system that is just wasted on me. Like, the magic system I thought was cool, and like the world was cool, but then it's just like, what are you doing? Why are you being so like sexually grotesque? Because I don't know why that element has to accompany a lot of this dark stuff. Like I don't know why those two have to go hand in hand. Like, what? Anyone who's read that book knows exactly what I'm talking about. And some people are like, oh my God, it's so good. And, and some people just doesn't bother. But for me, like, it's just some stuff is just gross for me. Like, I just don't like things being gross. And I agree with you about Dark Age. I don't think Iron Gold or Dark Age. I think Iron Gold and Dark Age stopped being fun at all. Like, I really enjoyed the first three because, I mean, they were fun at their core. It's how I can overlook the fact that Pierce Brown thinks that the rules of POV don't apply to him. And the amount of apologists that he has. Any other author they'd construct a gibbet in the middle of town and bring their families to watch someone be hanged by the neck until they're dead. But freaking Pierce Brown, because Red Rising, it's excused. Get out of here. Like, what a complete violation of reader trust. But And then the second two are just like, it's like the grown up going through your Hot Topic wallet chain bus pass period, where it's like, oh man, and then everyone was terrible and murdered 1 million people, as well as like the women, the children. They slayed them all. And
Sir Anakin Skywalker.
I mean, like, and I don't hate like Dark Age the way some people do. I don't like Iron Gold, and I like the overall story, but at the same time, I agree with you, Sarah. I think a lot of what's done in Dark Age is done just because, like, so when playing RPGs, and this is another thing that bothers me about fantasy in general. I there's a lot to be said at the beginning of an RPG, like a D&D game or a JRPG game, where the stakes aren't like world ending and your guys are actually in danger, like your heroes are actually in danger because anything can kill you. But then, like, the longer you play D&D and the more powerful your characters become, or the farther you get into a JRPG, well, now you have to fight. JRPG, the meme is always like you end up having to fight God. Like, that's how, like, you had to fight some bandits on your farm, and now you have to fight God at the end. Or in D&D, like, nothing can kill you, like, once you're like level 15. And it's like that. It's like it's power creep. Like, you keep having to scale up. Like, oh my gosh, well, what's the conflict now? Because, before it was this, and now, I mean, nothing can bring these guys down. So you have to keep topping yourself, and it keeps having to get like bigger and bigger, especially if you're going for like a shock value or how bleak can we get? Like, if it's not the end of the series, well, you can't have like book 5 of 7 be known as the bleakest one. Like, you've got to keep making the stakes higher. So I think people end up trapping themselves in that way somehow. I'm off topic.
It's okay. What would be the major titles of the genre? I don't think we have read major titles of the genre.
So by Klaus, but what Klaus is talking about, freaking Song of Ice and Fire is like the premier title, if that's what people consider it, which by Klaus's definition, I completely agree. I think a lot of people would not give it that designation. But I mean, I would agree with Klaus. Like, it's extremely bleak, and the people are terrible, and there's no, like, there are some people who are decent within it, but those people tend to get chewed up and spit out. So I think that's the primary one. People who disagree with Erickson's own thing would say Malazan. Joe Abercrombie, right? But like, did people give it that title, or did it come from, like, is this the Euthyphro dilemma here? Like, is it called Grimdark because he named himself Lord Grimdark, or is it Grimdark like by itself? Like, which one came first?
I think he named himself because fans called him that.
Anitha? What is your Abercrombie lore? Like what kind of, are you an archivist? No, I mean, I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
No, I don't know. I read it somewhere, but there are people who said First Law is not Grimdark. I mean, they also argued A Song of Ice and Fire is not Grimdark enough.
I defer to Klaus.
But that would probably be the camp of people who would say that, like, Prince of Thorns is Grimdark, and that is what classifies. So again, it circles back to this idea that there is no set definition, and you kind of have to determine what that means to you, and then fit the books that fit that definition into your own little Grimdark library.
Yeah, and people also say R. Scott Becker is Grimdark. There was no argument about it.
Right.
Those two, there was no argument. But for me, I don't think I'll be able to read that. I cannot take that much violence and that much dark, shady characters. For me, Parker is the limit. Beyond that, I don't think I can read.
That's good. And I do wonder if the, like, really, like, the highest high of Grimdark is starting to come down, because I think just after the general way of existence for the last couple of years. I think a lot of people are looking for more hope in their books. So I wonder if like the real peak that we had of so many books that came out that felt that way, if it's starting to circle around and the publishing trend is leaning a little bit more towards hopeful stories again, or at least hopeful stories to intersperse with your Grimdark.
Yes, but yes, I read some articles about that, but at the same time, the bubble I am in, BookTube friends, Discord friends, they still, most of them prefer Grimdark actually.
Which is, yeah, and I think we think of ourselves as like we're in booktube, right? We're in the fantasy sphere of booktube. We are surrounded by people who have those reading tastes, but the broader reading community, there's a lot more of the like romantasy inclined people than there are the high fantasy / grimdark inclined. But it's true, right? Even if it's it can be painful for some of us sometimes. It's, I think, like in terms of the general trend in fantasy, that is not as niche as
Yeah,
our tiny,
Alan also
our
started
relatively tiny group.
romantasy. Alan also started romantasy book. That means it took over
That's true.
completely.
He is bending to the trends. He cannot help himself.
Evie is asking, do you think Grimdark is darkness and depravity without any emotional impact or connection? Like Hob, you could argue she is Grimdark, but she gives it an emotional punch, if that makes sense. I think by the end, at least the last trilogy, I definitely felt it was Grimdark. Not restricting to emotional punch. That was there, but there are also some scenes, violent scenes, dark scenes, where I felt it was not necessary. It was definitely Grimdark for me. I
I don't
don't
know. I
think.
feel like oh, sorry, Anita. I was just saying, author intent sometimes I must play a role, I guess. I don't know. I feel like for me, Hob is just human exploration, and there's none of that. I don't think she's constructing something that's purposefully bleak. She's just looking so closely at a person, and we all have terrible things and good things, and we all struggle with emotions and relationships and connections, and that is what Realm of the Elderlings feels like to me more than Grimdark. But I haven't finished it. I, as everyone knows, have been on Ship of Destiny for 2 years, so I really can't be the authority here.
Yeah.
Well, as everybody knows, I stopped after the first trilogy because I didn't like it. And I wouldn't say that Grimdark is without emotional impact. Definitely not, because if we take Song of Ice and Fire as the example, then the fact that it is Grimdark make these stakes so high for me and make me be involved that much with these characters, because they feel sort of more human, because none of us, apart from Ellen, are like paragons of virtue, and we all have some kind of bad things we do. And that is why and that's why we ran you off BookTube, Klaus. Yeah, definitely. No, I think it feels like a gut punch, because you are connected to these characters, because these books are written so character focused, and because these people have to face hard choices and have to make hard choices where you have to decide. So it's kind of ethical dilemmas where you sort of have no good options, and then you do bad stuff. And I think that raises these stakes, and I feel way more connected to any character written by Abercrombie than I feel connected to, I don't know, Frodo in Lord of the Rings, because it just doesn't feel that real to me in a way.
I think that makes sense because Lord of the Rings is more focused on the world and the events happening around those characters rather than each character. That makes complete sense. Okay, let's move on to characters.
This will be the easier part to talk about, because many genres have
Morally gray characters. Okay, Alan, you can start. Why do you prefer them?
I'm
You.
so sick of hearing that freaking phrase. And the thing is, I'm actually not sick of hearing it because people don't say it as much anymore. Like a year ago, or a year and a half ago, like that's all anyone said all the time was all of morally gray characters. What they like, I'm not sure that like people are using the correct words. Oh my gosh, why does everyone in the world need me right now? I'm sick. Anyway, sorry, man. I don't know if people, if they mean like complex characters with like complex motivations, but morally gray, what I hear when people say morally gray a lot of the time, especially considering when the characters that they're talking about means like not a good guy, like morally gray, like just like anti-hero, like oh man, look at them, how morally gray they are. They have no like their right or wrong is completely different. I don't think that's what that means. Like I think you can be a good guy and have like make morally gray decisions. Like when like I don't know, when like freaking Captain Vimes has to would have to make a decision on whether or not to like rough up this thug, like to try to get more information, try to save Ankh-Mor Pork. I think that's a morally gray decision. Like, is it right to like put violence on this person that's in like that has been arrested or is running from you in order to try to save the larger good? I think it's a morally gray decision. Like I think that is a morally gray decision, but I don't think that's what people are talking about when they say morally gray. I think it has a tendency to like swing wilder toward the like protagonists that aren't good guys. I think is what people mean, is what I hear when people say that a lot. Because they don't want like white knight kind of people. Like I really like morally gray decisions because I think morally complex problems, like the one that I just said, I think that's really interesting. Like because there is no question on whether or not like Commander Sam Vimes is a good guy. 100% he's a good guy, like a paragon of justice and right. And yet, like, you know, I'm still gonna root for him when he roughs up this thug. You want to know why? Because don't be a thug and on the wrong side of freaking Commander Vimes. Get out of my face. Like just stand out of Vimes' way. But that's not necessarily like the right thing to do. Like the right thing, it's a stupid Carrot decision. Like Carrot always makes morally like white decisions. If we're talking about the City Watch books. Have you read any of these, Anita? Oh my God, I can't even talk to you. All right. All right. So, so when
this channel, did you just kick her off her own channel?
I have unlimited power, Sarah. I'm just kidding. But like Carrot would always make the absolute like virtuous decision, the most virtuous. He would say don't beat up the guy. I think that is more interesting. What?
Because Carrot's lovely.
Carrot's wonderful, absolutely. But those are the kind of decisions that I think are morally gray, and I think that's why I really like them. These complex human decisions, like in Long Price Quartet, like what we were talking about yesterday, Anita. Like those people make terrible choices that are on the moral gray line all the time, and I think it's fascinating. I don't like anti-heroes as much, which is what at least a couple years ago, BookTube was full of. Anytime someone said morally gray, it wasn't what I was talking about. It was instead like bad guys that are protagonists or protagonists that aren't like, you know, what, does that make sense? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, just like Klaus's Grimdark definition is different than other people's. That's my definition of morally gray. And I really like that. I like the other definition significantly less. So that's where I stand on that.
I agree with Grace, what she said when she said that it's a response to an era when we had heroes who always did the right thing or villains who always did the wrong thing. And so morally gray has really just been, when a lot of people say it, what they mean is that we have a complex hero, somebody who struggles, somebody who wants to make the right decisions but can't always do that, or is not sure how to do it, or has a journey along the way, which is, I'm not sure what, if we were just looking at semantics what morally gray means, but I feel like that's what everybody has made it mean over time.
But that's when like 2 years ago on BookTube, when everyone was talking about morally gray, like it doesn't feel like that's what they were talking about. Just like a complex hero, like it because every character they're talking about is like,
terrible.
yeah, it's just like a brute who's like, oh my gosh, oh no, I'm not gonna help that person because I'm too like embroiled in my own like depression. So instead, I'm gonna go just like punch a guy for even talking to me. Like, whatever, Dirty Harry, like, get out of my face. Like,
which when I think of like what morally gray maybe should be or could be I think of just like, if we're going to go back to the RPG stuff, like alignment wise, like someone who is neutral, right? Like you don't have any strong feelings of morality. You're not particularly evil. Like you're not out to hurt people, but you're whether it's that you're out for yourself or you just are apathetic, like there's no real guiding force on either side that's going to push you. It's really going to be circumstantial. What you do is going to depend on the moment.
Yeah, and I think there is no like Commander Vimes is not a morally gray character.
No,
so,
he just
yeah. I think it's morally gray decisions that I like.
Absolutely.
I like when characters have to make decisions that are morally complex or morally gray themselves. So Vimes is 100% a good guy. Like he's not a morally gray character. So I think I enjoy more just having talked it out. I think I enjoy more the morally complex issues and decisions that characters have to make. But I personally prefer like a decent human being as my protag. Like I generally try to. Faced with
with strong moral foundation who has to struggle with decisions that challenge that.
Correct. Those are my favorite. As opposed to
for me, characters like Vimes, I haven't read. Obviously, I heard Alan talking about him only. Vimes or Kelsier, even Ota from LPQ, they're heroes for me. I don't consider them as morally gray. I mean, I know people argue that Ota is morally gray because of the choices he made, and Kelsier is morally gray. People called Kelsier selfish. You know.
You mean heroic for having?
Yes, for me that was heroic.
So I don't know. They need to look up what that word means. Morally gray. They mean heroic. That's what they mean. So you're welcome. I'm sorry. Are you still laboring under oppression of Lord Ruler? Oh, you're not. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
So for me, they are heroes. I still prefer those kind of characters. I'm basic actually. I'm not cool kid like preferring like anti-heroes or like dark characters like that.
I hate anti-heroes.
But I did like Basso a lot. For me, he is morally gray character, like definition of morally gray character.
Yeah. I agree. Basso definitely is, and Basso is an exception for me because Basso are one of you inside a literal fishbowl, like, and someone like your owner is like tapping the side or something. Like,
I can hear this too.
Anita,
stop. Is it me? I don't know. I'll go mute.
Yes, it's you.
It is.
But I'm not doing anything.
Yes, I know, and yet we can hear.
Even now?
Yes. I mean, yes.
Okay, Klaus, what do you think?
Sorry, my Klaus talk.
Well, to me, morally gray basically is just pragmatic. And I kind of like these characters. I think Basso is a good example for that. So obviously he does stuff that is not, from a moral standpoint, perfect, the decisions he makes, but I think all of them are relatable and none of them are like intentionally bad or evil. So that's where he's coming from. And I think that's a fine definition.
Right. It's more like utilitarian. I'm going to, as long as the thing gets done at the end, if there's some bumps along the way, then I can deal with that. I can forgive that.
Basically, the way I prepare my classes. Yeah.
You're a morally gray teacher.
Definitely.
Oh, Alan's our anti-hero now. I'm gonna make him sing the Taylor Swift song when he gets back
Mm,
on.
definitely.
How am I?
Anita, you're muted.
I'm the morally whitest one here. How am I an anti-hero?
I don't know. You named yourself.
I didn't name myself anti-hero. I'm the good
Okay.
guy.
My next question is, as Alan said, like from last 2 years, there are a lot of dark characters who are considered as morally gray characters. So when will you consider them as just villains instead of morally gray? What kind of actions or what kind of choices they make? Or does it have to be like something to the plot or him, the person itself? Do you ever consider a protagonist as a villain?
I guess for me, when they do intentionally bad stuff. So when they can really see that what I'm doing right now is evil and I'm still doing it, I think then they are villains for me. Sometimes there are people that they don't have the empathy or something and don't realize what they're doing. But if there is intent behind your evil actions, then I think you are a villain in real life and also in a novel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. And when it becomes less of a struggle, when they're struggling with the consequences of their actions and recognizing that it's terrible but necessary and might weigh on them, versus when they start to rationalize bad things to fit their motive and thinking, well, this is the way it has to be because I say so.
Yeah, so I wouldn't consider Besso a villain, but I would, and I'm again picking an example from Song of Ice and Fire, I would consider Tywin Lannister as a villain because he understands the consequences of his actions, of murdering people at a wedding and stuff, but he still does it. Yeah.
Kill baby Hitler doesn't make you morally great. It's killing baby Hitler and not feeling bad about it. Interesting.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, I read recently, Alan also read, obviously, Juni trilogy. I think that protagonist is outright a villain for me. He has, I mean, there is motivation for him to do why he made certain choices, but to get what he wants, he does lot of bad stuff along the way. So he's outright villain for me. And Parker also in his latest trilogy, Cyber Corax, he also says that, you know, half the problems, no, not half, all the problems in the world are started by idealists, like heroes. If they keep quiet, there will not be any problems. That's interesting theory, actually. Okay, I wanted to highlight one comment where
I
someone.
know Anita did not change my name on screen. Anita, this is abuse of power.
He says after kicking her off her own live stream.
No, that is use of power.
Abuse
What
of
Anita's
power.
done is abuse of power.
Interesting.
Okay. Okay, I want to talk about, this darker heroes, and in the name of realism, is Grimdark crossing the line? That part, actually. What do you think?
At least I make it halfway. And everybody will die after me because who's going to heal them? No one. So when you say crossing the line, Anita, do you mean like in do you mean like in real life? Like
Actually, that's true. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, for your question. Do you mean like crossing the line like in real life? Like when does it become too much or when should it?
Yeah, I mean, see, most of the times when we ask why do people like Grimdark in general, not us personally, in general, people say that Grimdark is more realistic. Those characters are more realistic. You know, our
Mhm.
world is not exactly like completely white. So Grimdark is more realistic. So my question is, in the name of that making realistic, are is Grimdark? I'm not. I don't want to name specific authors or point anyone, but are authors crossing the line about the violence they're showing or the character protagonist they're showing? Are they too dark?
I
Yes.
feel like this has been a question since like video games started. Like, is there does making violent entertainment have any real world implications, or does it increase real world violence, or is it bad for people? And I don't think we have a good answer for that. And any answer is going to be complex because it depends on your environment and what kind of person you are and what kind of guidance you have and what's your moral foundation and structure and how can you enjoy things vicariously or not. Are you able to separate reality from fiction? And that's a hard question to answer in absolute.
I mean, I can answer it in absolute. Yes, there's. I have no qualms.
It's
Yeah.
too much. If you read it, you're terrible. If you write it, you're worse.
No, I mean there is too much. Like, and it's a matter of like explicitness for me. Like, I don't care if Kefka destroys the world by creating the continent of ruin. Like, I don't care. The freaking Final Fantasy didn't show me every single person, like the explicitness of every single person dying. That's
Right.
fine. I can get behind that. This is fantasy, whatever. A bunch of generic people off page died. That's fine. That has nothing to do with whatever. But like, there's an intimateness, um, like with being super explicit with violence. Like a single murder on page or whatever can be more disturbing than like, and then the evil guy shot the death laser from his tower and the whole city caught on fire and it's like, oh no, everybody died. And it's just like, whatever. But like watching one person like be dismembered piece by piece, it's like, oh man, that guy's way worse because of, like, ugh, like, look at all that grossness. So for me, I mean, that really is what does it for me, is being extremely explicit to where almost it just feels like the person is just like reveling in, like, even the writer is just like, oh, and I'm just like, you're gross. Like, this is gross. I just don't need to see it. So yeah, I certainly have a limit to where I can be pushed, where I can't. I'm just like, ugh, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, and that is humanity, right? Like, that is us. It is much easier for us to appreciate anything on an intimate scale than it is on a mass scale. We're not great as a whole at recognizing the larger picture. Like, there are bad things that happen all the time in the world at a huge scale that we ignore. And when something really bad happens to one person close to us, it hits hard. And part of that is, you have to compartmentalize as a human to make it through the world, or else you are going to be sad, depressed, and, dysfunctional for your entire life, because you can't process that much sadness and pain all at once. We're not made to do it, and it's really hard. So it's the same thing, right? And I guess just like every other answer, it's going to be not satisfying for a lot of people, because every answer is just like, it's personal, right? The definitions, the experience, the everything depends on what your capacity is to experience that. But it's there is, I think, for all of us, probably a limit, whether it's in detail or specifics. There are certain things that I can't read about, like in the Poppy War, when there's a lot of on-page descriptions of violence towards children, and specifically children who are not old enough to understand like why something really bad is happening to them. I can't handle it. Like, I find it much easier to read about an adult who can say, wow, this terrible thing is happening to me, the world is unfair, as opposed to like a 5-year-old child who's just like, where's my mom? Why is no one protecting me from this bad thing that's happening? So I think it's just a personal reaction and what is going to be too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Klaus, do you have anything to add?
I mean, all of like my second novel was like a never-ending spiral of violence and murder, so I can't read that stuff because I read it myself. But what Sarah has described is, I remember that scene, and that is where I draw the line. That is what was one of the reasons why I didn't like the Poppy War that much, because I think some things you really don't have to explicitly depict.
Yeah, and it's
the Poppy War
really
made me sick. I could not, like, for days afterward, I couldn't think of anything except that. And I was like, this is just, and that was too much for me. Even though I liked the series as a whole, I was like, I will never, ever read this again.
it's weird because all she's doing is being slightly less explicit than what actually happened.
Right, and that's the terrible part, right? Is knowing that it actually happened.
Yeah. And Sarah, as the resident psychiatrist, why is this the case? Why is violence against animals so much? Like, why is that a line for people? But like, cut off this guy's head. Like, nobody cares. Like,
Before Sarah answers, for me, both are horrible actually. Violence against animals and humans both. I don't understand when most of my friends say that, no, don't hurt animals. Come on, you. Why are you accepting violence against humans?
just people suck.
There you go. There's your answer.
People suck. People can defend themselves, and people are, responsible for the crap that they do sometimes and need to be punched in the face. So animals can't defend themselves, or, they didn't do anything to anybody other than they can't help it. Like, humans are douchebags. Now, am I saying that anybody before, Alan thinks that some people deserve to be killed? It's not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying. So, I mean, I don't know. Is that the answer, Sarah? Like, is that why?
I think so. And I think, like, because even if you look at what people find hard to handle with respect to humans, like, you'll find, I know some people are like violently either like anti-child or whatever, like to the point that sometimes I'm like, this is a complex for you. Like, just don't want them yourself and move on. It's okay. But for the most part, like, people will also be more upset if they see, someone young being hurt, or someone who is very old being hurt, or someone who has, someone who is intellectually disabled being hurt, like basically someone who is under the protection of somebody else getting hurt hits a lot harder than, a random adult. You're like, oh, you sucked, or wrong place, wrong time, or the world is hard. And I think that's the same thing as the animal thing. You're correct. We want to protect them, and they, haven't gotten themselves into this situation. Whereas a lot of the times, one way or another, we as adults get ourselves into all kinds of situations.
That's true. I mean, there's also like stuff that I read in fantasy. Like, I'm way more okay. Like,
Speaking of children,
I'm way more okay with, I don't know, crap in fantasy books than I am with like real life. Like, am I okay with someone, with this person stabbing this person in real life? No, I'm not. But I am in fantasy because that guy's the good guy, and I hate this other guy. And guess what else? Neither of them are real. So it doesn't matter. And no, it doesn't mean a dang thing about me as a person. Like, it does not mean that I condone one thing or another, but it does mean that this is clearly the good guy and this dude is clearly a douchebag. And in fantasy, you should stab him so that you can go and stab the bad guy. And I'm totally.
It becomes just like a bad thing, right? And you're like, okay, in this world, bad things can be vanquished, and that bad thing is represented by this fake person. Like, it's not an actual human; it's just an idea.
Exactly. I mean, and it's like that. Like Sal, someone earlier, murder versus conquest. Sal said up there, it's hard because I love the Romans and I love the Greeks and I love empire and I love conquest. I don't want you to tell me about all the horrible things that like the specific things that were done. And like, I don't want to hear about all the brutalities that the Romans inflicted upon this particular ancient people. I don't want to know that, because now it's like, I don't want to know that. But like the Romans conquering in the abstract is awesome, because I love the Romans and I love empires in the abstract. I do not condone, any of other stuff. So it's just a weird, complex thing when you start to process whatever. And this is why I read fantasy, because I can root for things and not feel like a terrible person. And and the good guys win sometimes. You know what's Grimdark? IRL. That's Grimdark. IRL. So that's my insight.
Okay. Joanna's question: do you all think prose matters when depicting dark content? Yes, for me, a lot. When it also about not just prose, about what they're focusing on, others focusing on what scene and what particular action of the character they are focusing, like leering on that violent scene, or just telling us, is it me again?
I'm muted, so I don't think it's me.
Okay. So it depends on, if that violent scene or like dark scene is added for the plot and just showing that and moving on the way, that matters a lot actually for me. That also adds the complexity. At the same time, they're not focusing on that. It's not me. I muted. The sound is not coming.
Maybe it's
I
Alan
bet
this
it's
time.
the storm raging outside my house. I don't know.
You're about to take off.
Hmm.
You're going to be transported. This is actually Portal Fantasy now, beginning.
So, what do you think, Sarah? Do you think prose matters?
I think so. And I specifically vocabulary matters too, even or as much as style. Just the words that you choose to use and when you choose to use them, I think are important, especially since, as Alan pointed out before, sexual violence becomes a big part of violence in general in fantasy and grimdark fantasy. And I think in those circumstances, the language you use is important too. And can be something, it can mean the difference between a scene that somebody can read and still feel absorbed in the book, and a scene that somebody reads and it kind of transports them out of the book and just, brings on all kinds of terrible feelings. So I think it definitely matters, like the prose, the vocabulary, the presentation, whether or not you can see intent behind what the author's writing. And sometimes you read things, you're like, does the author even think that this is bad? Or at least I do sometimes. I'm like, does the author even think that this is not a great thing to do? And, that's not something that you can tell really from reading a book. But sometimes I do wonder, like, I'm not sure that I believe that you think the character is doing a bad thing right now. And for me, that's something where I'm like, okay, this is not something that I am invested in any longer.
Klaus?
Yeah, definitely agree. It's basically, it's the difference between writing, I don't know, I sliced him open versus I eviscerated him and whatever. So prose definitely plays a huge role here. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Klaus, I want you to answer this one because you also write. What do you think about this one? Do
I
you
don't
think?
know what that final second to last word means.
I mean, I think
it's like a way that excites you, like it's meant to inspire.
Okay. It depends. It depends on if it's a character-focused book and the narrator is the person doing the evil stuff, then it kind of can make sense that it feels like, okay, this is fun. I don't know. Let's stick with the example of killing somebody, and that person's obviously having fun. Then if it's character-focused, I am basically fine with that, because that is how that evil person would feel. And I don't think you can say that the author thinks it's fine because the character thinks it's fine or the narrator thinks it's fine. It's sort of more reading between the lines. So yeah, it's hard to say. I think if I look at the entire book and I have the feeling that there are huge red flags in this novel and they are not placed here intentionally or to provoke some kind of reaction from the reader, but instead it's just obviously wrong stuff happening. And I can see that, okay, the author does not see any problem with that. If I have that in the entire novel, then I get a problem. Otherwise, if it's in the situation, and at some point in the novel I get a hint that the author obviously feels that this is wrong and there is some sort of repercussion for that happening, then I'm fine with that.
Okay. And I also have another question for you as a writer. When you write a traumatic scene, actually, does it traumatize you as well?
Yeah, it has to. Otherwise, it's not good enough. So if I kill off a character that I like, then it has to hurt. Otherwise, I have done a bad job before. So it really has to. It really has to be traumatizing. I have to have built up that character. Let's say it's not a narrator. Let's say it's just, I don't know, the best friend of the narrator dies, hypothetically, which always happens in my books. Then they need to have been established before. Like there has to be a relationship that is strong enough that the reader is attached to that other person. They have to really know who they are. They have to like them. They have to like their humor. They have to like them as a person. And the reader must feel that now something is missing from the story because you were not expecting that person to be gone. You felt like they would be along far longer than they were, and then it hurts. And that has to traumatize you as a writer as well, because if I kill a good character, a good person as a character, if I kill them and it doesn't hurt myself, then I have not built up a satisfying character. It really has to hurt for myself. Otherwise, it's just an okayish character, and then the readers will also just think, okay, they're dead now. Whatever, let's move on to the next chapter.
Nicely said.
Sorry.
I saw Matt's comment about Lolita, and I think Lolita is a good example of where you can see a very talented author present a character who believes that he is not doing anything wrong and that he's kind of fueled by this passion, and also write a book that is funny even though it shouldn't be, but also tells you like this is terrible, and you can tell the whole time that the author believes that it's terrible and knows that you know that it's terrible, and still pulls off a book that is compelling to read. So, and My Dark Vanessa too, but My Dark Vanessa is a little bit different because you're following the person who was wronged instead of the person who is doing the thing that is wrong. But they're both excellent. I agree that they're both done very well, just different approaches to a similar story.
So, any final thoughts before I move on to recommendations?
No, I think it was, we covered a lot. Yeah. Alan didn't need to be able to say anything. And we got through a whole discussion.
Yeah. Alan is sick, so that's okay.
I said plenty.
I know, you did.
That's right.
Did.
I said plenty.
Okay.
Plenty. Plenty the Elder. Sorry, that was dumb. Go.
Who is your favorite morally grey character, and what is like perfect Grimdark book for you? It doesn't have to be exact definition of Grimdark, which for you, which it is perfect.
Yeah.
The first law has the best balance for me. Like that's where I like the darkness and the humor mixed together. That's my, even though, as you said, some people don't count it as Grimdark. That's my go-to.
I'm gonna go with Storm of Swords here. So sorry, Evie, I'm not picking up Abercrombie. In general, any Abercrombie book works for that as well. But Storm of Swords for me is the best fantasy novel ever written. So I am going to go with that and with Jaime Lannister. Definitely my favorite Grimdark character because of what happens in that book. Yeah. And I think reading that series is totally worth it, even though it will never be finished.
It is for me, Sal. Alan?
Me too. To be clear.
So Basso is one. Basso Kunessen from the company is another, because Gase Dorenja from the Engineer trilogy. Like, talk about people give me. It's a difficult character to root for. I'm not even sure I root for him. I think I like Parker's characters in this particular thing. But I was legit also going to say Song of Ice and Fire with Klaus's definition here, and I was going to say Tyrion Lannister, because that is someone who knows, who is aware of the world, and is making the absolute best go of it. And since Klaus took Storm of Swords, I'll take Clash of Kings and the Battle of Blackwater Bay, which is just absolutely horrifying. If you really stop and think about what's happening during that particular battle, like so many ways that I would not want to die happening simultaneously in that particular battle. And I just think Tyrion is I don't know. Tyrion's one of my favorite characters in the series. And he is a good example of, I mean, he's not a good guy either, but he's not as bad as the really bad guys. And so you can root for him anyway. And
he's funny, so.
Yes, and he's funny, which forgives a lot. Now I did have a different favorite character in that series. And well, I'm not going to spoil that series for everybody, but
Song of Ice and Fire, everyone knows anyway.
Now you have to tell me after the stream who your favorite character was.
Okay, I mean, it's not super hard to figure out, and it's also not super hard to figure out why they're not my favorite character anymore.
Is someone from book one?
Because they're not alive anymore. At any rate, so yeah, Tyrion Lannister, Song Ice and Fire.
Poor Alan.
Okay, I'll pick. It's tough actually. My favorite character is different from perfect morally grey character for me. Favorite character, I'll pick either Basso or Cyrus Corax, but perfect morally grey character, or I'm not sure if to call anti-hero or not, but Gignomai from Hammer to me. I pick the Hammer as the perfect Grimdark for me, where I can take what author is telling me, where I don't feel miserable. I understand what is happening, which is perfect, reasonable dark for me. Also, Gage Duranja from Engineer Trilogy is the most complex character I read. Horrible, despicable character. Nowhere, none of the books I liked that kind of character. But Parker made me invested in that character. I rooted for him because he looked as a hope for me, actually. Okay, maybe he will stop the villain. So that's why I rooted for him.
Klaus.
Kept hope alive.
Hi.
You exist.
He's got one more test, and then he's like full-time complete teacher.
No, I had the test. You had
it? Okay.
I had it on Thursday. Now I'm free and I have a life again. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, so Klaus, are you coming back to BookTube, Klaus?
No, I don't think so. I don't have the time. Seriously not.
Are you coming back to Discord, Klaus?
I am on Discord. I check Discord every morning. And
Okay,
sometimes I do write something there.
Okay, good. Good. All right.
Are
Anyway,
you up for?
I was just like,
I saw Christina.
Are you up for buddy reads and discussions?
What?
I am available for. Obviously, I am available for such things. Yes.
Klaus.
I'm not busy with TikTok, Matt. No.
What was your
No.
favorite book you read last year, Klaus?
I only read One Piece, so
Wait,
So it was easy.
like all of One Piece. So
are you caught up with One Piece?
almost. I am on like 114, I think. So I read the big chapter things. Yeah.
But you're almost caught up with like current?
Yeah, I've like read up to the end of Wano, so
Dude,
Yeah.
when you get caught up, message me and we will
Yeah.
talk and speculate. That's awesome. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that you were reading One Piece. 2, you read all of One Piece. And 3, that you only read One Piece.
I mean, I didn't read anything, and then like starting when the live action series came out on Netflix, I started to read it. And I read all of it while I was supposed to prepare for my big exam. So obviously it's an addiction.
What
But
are you
now
doing
I've
else
started
now?
here.
School and coaching
I
soccer.
started Grace of Kings now, so which is like a real book. So yeah.
Do you hate it? Is it good?
I have read 25 pages or something, and it's okay. It's not bad, but I'm not hooked so far.
Skewer their darlings, Klaus.
Yeah. I think it's One Piece has definitely grimdark elements. Definitely.
I think parts of it do. Now, if freaking the guy would ever pull the trigger and kill anybody, it'd be great.
I mean, yeah, that's what really goes on my nerves.
Same.
Definitely.
Anyway, sorry. Hey, One Piece infects everything. Anita, sorry. It takes away.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
The consequence of being on BookTube. Eventually, One Piece comes up. If you're there long enough, everything leads to One Piece.
No, everything leads to Sanderson. This is
That's-
One Piece.
that's-
Yeah, I don't want Sanderson to finish, for the record, I don't want Sanderson to finish Song of Ice and Fire. Definitely not. That's definitely not something I would ever want to see. Then I would prefer it to be unfinished.
I don't think he will.
Oh, we need a Sanderson ending to Song of Ice and Fire. That would be
No,
Terrible.
be great.
definitely not. Definitely not.
It would be done tomorrow.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like it. I have read good fan fiction that has good endings, and I prefer that ending that I got there over the Sanderson ending. I'm fine with him. I like books by him. I hated books by him, but I don't think his writing style fits. And I don't think Abercrombie fits either. Before somebody brings up him, I think he's too dark.
I hear you.
Okay. Let's end the stream here. So thank you everyone in the chat. And sorry for finishing it earlier than I planned because Alan is sick and I am also sick. It's getting tough to sit down and talk. So I'm closing it early. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out. And